I met John Woo when I was fresh out from college. Went back to Hong Kong, didn't know anybody, and I worked for Golden Harvest, Raymond Chow, and started. I started without knowing anything. I started, producing films, and I did two films. The third one was supposed to be a John Woo film, and we got along great. It's an action comedy called Long Time No See. And then he had we did a prep and everything, and he had a big fight with the studio about casting. So one day before principal photography, the studio stopped the picture. So we worked together back as early as 1978 or 79, I can remember, but the film never happened. But I knew him since then. And then I moved on to other things, and he moved on to other things, and we didn't see each other for 10 years until we came back together when I was hired by Tsui Hawk to run his company, Film Workshop, and then our paths crossed again. To tell you the truth, when I haven't seen him for that 10 years, I haven't seen any of his films because he made very bad comedies back then, and they're not funny. and all of a sudden he made this picture, A Better Tomorrow, and nobody thought much of it, in the beginning, because it's not part of that trend of Hong Kong films, comedies or action, but it's a drama. And when it became so successful, everybody was so shocked. Everybody in the industry, including the people who financed the film, were so shocked about it. And then because we haven't been in touch for 10 years, I felt bad about calling him and congratulating him until after A Better Tomorrow 2, I was hired by Film Workshop, and then we did A Killer. And so on and so forth. John was very much influenced by the French gangster films of the policiers of the 60s and early 70s. And he wanted to, do those kind of films, and nobody understood him back then. And I just wanted to support him in whatever he wanted to do, and also at that time he's very, very tight with Chow Yun-fat, who's a superstar. And what I did was with a name like John Woo and Chow Yun-fat together, it's easy. I just make up a one-page proposal to give it to the financier, and they said yes. The same afternoon they would say yes, and go ahead, make the film. If we did a film without Chow Yun-fat in it, I would be very worried. But because he's such a big box office guarantee, I know that any film that he's in, it's going to make money. It's going to be huge, and so that would give John a lot of leeway in his creativity, and so I wasn't really thinking about the market or anything at all, because at that time I never thought of a film could travel outside of Asia. We just wanted to do an action film, that's all, and so I wasn't thinking of the marketing or anything like that when we were shooting. When John started the idea of Hard Boiled, it's really, he wanted to do a sort of a Dirty Harry kind of film, and he had another story, which about this psychopath, supposed to be played by Tony Leung, who killed babies by poisoning baby food and so forth, and I find it kind of icky, and we didn't have a script. So we wanted to shoot in that tea house, that location, which is going to be torn down, very soon. And so why don't we shoot the opening action sequence? And so we did that, and we don't know who those people sitting around were. And then after that scene, the tea house was torn down, and we started to work on the script. And by talking to, at that time, I'm making overture to Hollywood and trying to get John to do American films, and by talking to different people, they said, kill babies, that's disgusting. You cannot kill either babies or dogs in your films. So I told John that because he really wanted to do American films. He said, okay, let's script the story and start from scratch. And we hired another writer, Barry Wong. He came up with this present story, of that's, and also it's also based on a true story, of a very deep undercover cop, his story, and so he wrote a treatment. Barry wrote a treatment, and we started shooting with the treatment. And he finished the first part of a script, and he took a trip to Africa, Barry, and he died. And so it's kind of a struggle for us because we only were working according to a treatment, and then we shot the first part of a film, and the second part, we brought in different writers to help shape it. But it's kind of like John was creating things as he went along, and which made the producing job hell.
What do you think you're doing?
Shooting the tea house scene, we just kind of did it, without worrying too much about safety and those kind of things. And also we shot the whole scene in 5 days. I mean, it's 5 very long days. And we were bothered by the triad people because even though we were shooting in interior in a building away from the streets, but that was in Mongkok, and so we have 6 different triad groups coming up for protection money, and we got to deal with that, and I remember it's very, very hot in the middle of a summer, and it's with the lights and everything. But somehow we did it. I don't know.
Get down!
We have a great stunt coordinator, Philip Kwok, and he took care of a lot of us stuff and safety issues. But of course, we have to make sure that the main actors would not be hurt. But that's the way how everybody worked in Hong Kong back in those days. Unlike Hollywood, you're not allowed to do this action, or you're not allowed to do this or do that. But insurance, we didn't have insurance. No, we didn't. I think Tony Leung brings a certain kind of sensitivity to the character that no other actors can. I mean, he played this really tortured character, and it's never quite explained in a film, why he's that way, or you don't know anything about his background or anything. But he just at that moment when the story takes place, I mean, he did a excellent job, and as a matter of fact, it got Mr. Chow jealous because he said, he got the juicier part with a lot more to play with, a lot more depth and a lot more layers certainly. And so he felt his characters, he's a Dirty Harry, but he's also, very one-note hero, even though he's dirty. There was a side story to the Tequila character, which involves his relationship with a woman. At that time, it's a girlfriend or wife, we hadn't decided, played by Teresa Mo. And because of the length of a movie, we cut it out. We cut out all those scenes. We didn't even shoot them. I don't think of his relationship, his personal relationship. So he felt he need to, aside from all the people working in the precinct and all the criminals, he felt he need to have an outside connection, and so it was Chow Yun-fat who created those scenes in a bar. He said, I need a mentor. I need somebody I can talk to. Like, now it's the psychiatrist, even Sopranos is a psychiatrist. But back then, it's his mentor. He goes to hang out in a bar. He plays jazz. He talked to the bartender. He wanted John to play the bartender, knowing that John would not cut out those scenes. Those scenes would remain in the movie.
Even if I was still a cop, yes, I'd help him.
Such character.
Not me, my old buddy. It's the guy up there.
I think it's a chemistry that sometimes a director and an actor has that's beyond explanation, like, Scorsese and De Niro, or Scorsese and Leonardo DiCaprio, stuff like that. Chow Yun-fat just shines in John Woo's movies. He did 12 films per year back then, but only the films that he made for John, he really shines. He became a superstar. Every time Chow Yun-fat finished the John Woo film, he said, I'm never going to work with that director again. We work too hard, schedule's too long. And in those days, if he did a comedy, it took 30 days to shoot, but in John's films, it's 120 days minimum. And it's a lot more work. He had to do a lot of stunts. He, got hurt, whatever. So every time he said that, but then when he looked at the end result, he said, oh, John, where's my next movie? We had a very detailed treatment, and we knew back then exactly what direction the characters are going. We know what the ending is going to look like, and the hospital is going to blow up and everything. We know that, just the details. For instance, in a hospital, he came up with this great idea on the spot of doing the 3-minute shot in one take. Of course, we cheated. It's not. It's actually two shots in it. There's a dissolve somewhere in the middle, but he came up with this brilliant idea, and it's not scripted. He just came okay, I want to do this one take, and we rehearsed for a whole day, and we shot for 2 days, and it's a 3 minute of action scene. The setting of the final action scene in the hospital was really Barry Wong's idea, because he said, if you have somebody who wants to smuggle guns and firearms, where would you set that place? I mean, you cannot put it in a warehouse. It's so typical. You got to set it in the basement of a building that you can never in a million years suspect it's a bed for criminals. And so we thought of either a school, a kindergarten, or a hospital, and so finally picked the hospital because it's also meaningful. Because babies are being born in hospitals every day, and then meanwhile, in the basement, people are doing things to kill people, and so we thought it's a very interesting juxtaposition. One thing that's great about Hard Boiled, I mean, even though it's unlike the other Hong Kong action films or gangster films at that time, there's a lot of humor in John's films, and even in The Killer, or even a dark film like The Killer, or this one, Hard Boiled, because nobody knew that. I mean, a lot of people did not know that John had a background of comedies, and he made 8 comedies in a row before he made A Better Tomorrow, and so he always find moments to put in humor. And I think on this, you should ask John that question. That the shot of the baby peed on chow yun fat and put out a fire. I mean, it's so hilarious, but it worked, and it worked. And I think it's based on one of the babies peeing on somebody. I couldn't remember. I'm sorry, I couldn't remember, but I thought it worked out fine. I remember when shooting Hard Boiled, John's like a different person, when he's sort of like in a mode where he's like a total stranger to me, because he's completely immersed himself in his work, and sometimes it's even hard for me to communicate with him. Things improved a lot in Hollywood because there's a system, but back then, for instance, I said, when can you stop shooting the scene, and when can you stop all the shooting? I mean, bang, 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 and he just won't answer me. So it's but at the same time, I have to be responsible for the budget, and I have to deal with the financier. They're very nice people, but I still got to deal with them. I was in the office. I got a call from somebody from people on location, say, you gotta come. He's gonna blow up the whole hospital. I mean, it's a building. He's gonna blow up the whole building. We are all gonna get killed. So I went there and I said, like, cut it down to about 1/4. And he's really mad at me for doing that. But I said, I do it for the safety of the people. And he didn't talk to me for 4 days. When I arrived on the set, he would just turn the other direction and avoided me. And but I have to do my job. One of John's brilliance is he can push things to the extreme and make it work. For instance, one time we watched a film, very, very brilliant film, LA Confidential. There was one action scene in a shootout, the last scene was a shootout. And he said, wow, I wish I can do that because it's so restrained. It's just, the amount of action is just right. I know what he's saying. He couldn't do this because he's a master of excesses. It's reflected in his personal life and his, how he want to, if he order food, for instance, he will always want to order that nobody can eat anymore, and take them home. It's the same with shooting. I'm still having this problem to this day on Redcliffe because he always wanted too much. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. In a film like Wind Talkers, I think it's went overboard a little bit. But in the case of Hard Boiled, it's just perfect. It's those excesses that make the scene so unique. A lot of people attacked John on his on the violence of his action scenes, but however, I never felt that they are really violent because they don't look real. They are just like part of the action of a video game or in a comic book, and they are much larger than life. People don't fly in midair and to shoot people. That's not real. So there's a kind of there's a certain kind of even balladic beauty in it in those action moments, which transcends the normal violent action scenes, in a lot of other films, and so he can get away with a lot of violence. In Hard Boiled, we didn't have that many shootings in the streets. I think we have this. We rented this abandoned Coca-Cola building, and we built sets inside the building. It doubles as a hospital and double as the warehouse in the middle part of the movie. So we did a lot of the scenes in a very controlled environment. Whereas in the streets, it's back then the Hong Kong government and the police are not very helpful because when they have one complaint from people, I don't like the noise. I don't like them shooting and from a neighborhood person, and they can come and even though we have a permit, they can come and shut down your production. I think one of the things that one of the even though at that time we turned out like 200, 300 films per year, but we had very or no support from the government at that time. I think Hard Boiled is more like more of an action film than a dramatic film. Whereas the people in Hong Kong, maybe they like more story, more characters. I don't know. I never did analyze that, but maybe people said it's too violent, too much action, and they couldn't stand it. You know, it's some of the comments from the people in Hong Kong. But it was right before films like Die Hard or Schwarzenegger movies came out, and I think the Western audience liked a film with so much action in it. It's really cool action. It's really fantastic action. Hard Boiled was a moderate hit in Hong Kong. I mean, it's not like a Bear Tomorrow, but it did well. It did well in other parts of Asia. For instance, in Taiwan, it's not as successful as Once a Thief. But the bigger responses to the film was really from the West, from outside of Asia. We didn't really expect that. I first took the film. I forgot. I took it to Toronto and took it to somewhere else, and people were like standing up. And I was in a theater in Toronto, and people were actually cheering and stomping, at the floor all the time throughout the entire film. I said, "This is not Rocky Horror Show. Why are you doing that?" And they really loved Tequila, the character in Chow Yun-fat, and every time he appeared on the screen, people clapped. It was unexpected. I really think, looking back at Hard Boiled, how many years now? It's 15 years at least. I still think it stands among the better action films of all times. I think, because John reinvented a lot of action scenes, which has been copied and parodied in other films, action films from all over the world, not just from America, but also from Korea, for instance. But still, I think Hard Boiled stands on its own. But looking back, and I haven't looked at the film for many years now, but the last time I watched it, I was like, wow, did we do that? It's still quite amazing. As we get more mature, we want to grow, and we cannot really stay at the level of Hard Boiled or those Broken Arrow, those kind of films, and we got to grow out of it. And so we will attempt to try different things. We would never give up action, let's put it this way, but we play around with it. Maybe we do an action film with female characters, who knows?